So now they're coming in by land, and even the land is concerned because I told them that's going to be next. You know, the land is going to be next, and we may go to the Senate, we may go to the Congress and tell them about it. But I can't imagine they'd have any problem with it.
A new report from the nonprofit Environmental Working Group shows millions of Americans are drinking water tainted with unsafe levels of chemicals, metals, and radioactive substances. In its annual update to its tap water database, the group analyzed water quality data taken from nearly 50,000 water systems across the country from 2021 to 2023, and it found 324 different contaminants in drinking water.
We tried to put this in perspective for you. This would be filling 4 18-wheelers for all the drugs just in the last month that have been taken off the streets. 58,000 kilos of cocaine. Think about a big backyard swimming pool. That would fill 1.5 swimming pools. Just the powder cocaine that has been removed, saving lives this last month, thanks to all of these people around the table. 2,300 kilos of fentanyl powder and 2.1 million fentanyl pills off the streets. And as the president said, more than 1,000 illegal guns. The Biden administration was, for way too long, all of these great law enforcement officers surrounding the table were not able to do their job.
The Sinaloa Cartel took over your water treatment plant. For 4 years, they controlled a municipal facility in New Mexico designed to clean your drinking water and used it to process fentanyl precursor chemicals instead. 67 employees at the plant, from managers to technicians, were all cartel operatives processing $1.4 billion in drug chemicals while your community trusted them to purify water. They used industrial equipment meant for water purification to manufacture poison. They dumped toxic waste into the water system, and they exploited a government facility that receives minimal oversight because nobody imagines a public utility could be a cartel chemical factory. The FBI just arrested all 67 employees and shut down a plant that was producing chemicals for fentanyl production across the entire Southwest while pretending to treat water. Environmental contamination, public health crisis, and something agents found in those processing tanks proves the cartel wasn't just making chemicals. They were poisoning the water supply. Subscribe to Truth America right now because this infiltration will terrify you. Here's what happened. Water treatment plants are critical infrastructure that most people never think about. Turn on your tap, water flows, flush your toilet, waste disappears. Municipal water systems operate invisibly, processing millions of gallons daily through complex chemical and mechanical systems. And because they're government-owned public utilities serving essential functions, they receive routine oversight but rarely intensive scrutiny. Nobody imagines a water treatment plant could be anything other than exactly what it claims to be. The Sinaloa Cartel imagined differently. In 2020, cartel chemical engineers identified a perfect cover for large-scale precursor chemical production: municipal water treatment facilities. These plants already have industrial chemical processing equipment, receive regular chemical deliveries, chlorine, fluoride, coagulants, employ chemical technicians, and operate 24/7 with minimal external observation. Within 6 months, the cartel had replaced the entire staff, all 67 positions, with cartel operatives. Not one legitimate water treatment employee remained. The plant became, effectively, a cartel-controlled chemical factory operating under the cover of a municipal utility. The operation worked with disturbing efficiency. Chemical deliveries arrived regularly, ostensibly chlorine, treatment chemicals, and maintenance supplies. Actually, reagents, catalysts, and raw materials for precursor synthesis. Over 4 years, the plant produced approximately $1.4 billion worth of precursor chemicals, enough to manufacture fentanyl that could kill hundreds of millions. But the operation created catastrophic environmental and health consequences. The chemical synthesis process produced toxic byproducts that the cartel dumped into the water treatment system itself. Trace amounts of precursor chemicals, solvents, and synthesis byproducts entered the municipal water supply. Levels weren't immediately lethal, but over 4 years, residents of Sunland Park and surrounding areas consumed water contaminated with industrial toxins and drug manufacturing residues. The 67 employees knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't deceived workers, they were recruited cartel operatives with chemical engineering backgrounds, paid $100,000 to $200,000 annually to operate the facility. Some had worked in legitimate pharmaceutical manufacturing. Others had chemical training from Mexican universities. All had been specifically recruited to run a chemical production operation disguised as water treatment. The investigation that would expose the water plant operation began in March 2024, when EPA environmental inspectors conducting routine water quality testing in the Rio Grande area detected unusual chemical signatures in Sunland Park's water supply. The contaminants weren't typical industrial pollutants or agricultural runoff. They were synthesis byproducts consistent with pharmaceutical or chemical manufacturing, compounds that shouldn't exist in a municipal water system. EPA contacted FBI and New Mexico State Police. If industrial chemical contamination was occurring, it suggested illegal manufacturing. FBI's Chemical Crimes Unit and DEA's Chemical Operations Section formed a joint task force to investigate the source. Environmental forensic analysis traced the contamination to the Rio Grande Regional Water Treatment Facility. Water samples taken directly from the plant's output showed even higher concentrations of suspicious compounds. But the plant was supposedly only treating water. Where were industrial chemicals coming from? In April 2024, FBI obtained federal warrants for inspection of the facility under Environmental Protection Authority. Agents conducted a routine EPA compliance inspection that was actually a covert criminal investigation. What they found shocked even experienced investigators. Chemical analysis of residues in processing tanks showed compounds consistent with fentanyl precursor synthesis. Drop a comment below. Should cartels who infiltrate water plants face terrorism charges? Is poisoning public water supply an act of war? And if you're not subscribed to Truth America yet, hit that button. We expose how cartels weaponize your critical infrastructure. Subscribe now. Investigators interviewed former employees who'd worked at the plant before the 2021 staff replacement. All described the same pattern, being told the facility was being restructured, receiving termination packages, and watching entirely new staff take over. In June 2024, FBI installed covert surveillance cameras around the facility. Footage documented nighttime chemical deliveries, industrial equipment running during hours when water treatment should have been minimal, and trucks removing materials labeled as waste, but handled with unusual care, suggesting valuable precursor chemicals, not actual waste. Undercover agents posed as chemical suppliers and contacted plant managers offering specialty reagents for advanced water treatment. The managers understood immediately this was code for precursor manufacturing and placed orders for chemicals that had no legitimate water treatment application. November 26, 2024, 4 a.m., FBI tactical teams coordinated with DEA, EPA Criminal Investigation Division, HSI, and New Mexico State Police for Operation Clean Water. The raid on the Rio Grande Regional Water Treatment Facility and arrest of 67 cartel chemical operators. At precisely 4:17 a.m., federal agents surrounded the facility. The plant operated 24/7, so night shift workers were present. FBI breached simultaneously at 4 entry points, overwhelming the 18 employees on duty before they could destroy evidence or alert others. Inside the facility, agents found an active chemical production operation. In what should have been water filtration tanks, precursor chemicals were being synthesized. Industrial mixers contained reagents worth millions. Processing equipment was configured for pharmaceutical synthesis, not water treatment. The smell was overwhelming. Chemical synthesis creates distinctive odors that water treatment doesn't produce. Plant manager Ricardo Vega was arrested in the control room. FBI seized computers containing 4 years of production records, 1,240 batches of precursor chemicals manufactured, shipment schedules, quality control data, and communications with fentanyl production facilities that received the precursors. Vega had coordinated the entire operation. In the facility's laboratory, supposedly for water quality testing, agents found equipment for analyzing precursor chemical purity, reference standards for fentanyl precursors, and notebooks documenting synthesis procedures. This wasn't a water testing lab. It was a quality control laboratory for drug chemical manufacturing. In storage areas, FBI found 340 tons of chemicals, reagents, catalysts, solvents. Some had legitimate water treatment applications, but most were specifically for precursor synthesis. Chemical inventory records showed the facility had received over 2,000 tons of chemicals in 4 years, far exceeding what any water plant its size would use. Environmental analysis of the water system revealed catastrophic contamination. The cartel had dumped synthesis byproducts and toxic waste directly into water treatment processes. Testing showed 140 different chemical contaminants in the municipal water supply, some carcinogenic, some neurotoxic, all resulting from the cartel's manufacturing operation. Agents arrested the 18 night shift workers, then moved to arrest the remaining 49 employees at their homes across Sunland Park and El Paso. By 7 a.m., all 67 cartel operatives were in federal custody. The facility was immediately shut down. EPA declared an environmental emergency. Alternative water supplies were rushed to Sunland Park, and environmental remediation teams began the process of decontaminating the plant and water system. November 27, 2024. Attorney General Pamela Bondi held a press conference in El Paso alongside FBI Director Christopher Wray, DEA Administrator Ann Milgram, EPA Administrator Michael Regan, and New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Yesterday, federal law enforcement shut down a Sinaloa cartel operation that weaponized critical infrastructure. The cartel took complete control of a municipal water treatment plant in New Mexico and used it to manufacture $1.4 billion worth of fentanyl precursor chemicals over 4 years. All 67 employees were cartel operatives. They dumped toxic waste into the public water supply, and they exploited a government facility that serves 17,000 residents to produce chemicals for the poison-killing Americans. This is not just drug manufacturing. This is an attack on public health and critical infrastructure. We've arrested all 67 operatives and declared an environmental emergency to protect the community. The community reaction was horror. Residents who'd drunk the water for 4 years demanded health screenings. Parents whose children had consumed contaminated water sought medical evaluation. And the city council faced intense scrutiny for accepting the cartel's investment and handing over operational control. The environmental crisis was severe. EPA testing found contamination throughout Sunland Park's water system. The facility would require complete decontamination. Estimated cost, $28 million and 18 months. Temporary water supplies cost the city $200,000 monthly. And long-term health monitoring for 17,000 exposed residents would cost millions more. The charges against the 67 defendants were comprehensive: manufacturing controlled substance precursors, conspiracy, environmental crimes, poisoning public water supply, and for coordinators, terrorism-related charges for weaponizing critical infrastructure. They face 30 to 70 years in federal prison. Faced with overwhelming evidence, FBI had chemical analyses, production records, intercepted communications, and environmental contamination data. All 67 defendants accepted plea agreements. Plant managers received 60 to 70 years. Chemical operators received 40 to 50 years. Support staff received 30 to 40 years. At allocution hearings, several defendants expressed remorse for contaminating the water supply, though prosecutors noted this remorse came only after arrest. Ricardo Vega, facing 70 years, told the court, "I knew we were making chemicals for fentanyl. I didn't fully understand we were poisoning the water people drank. That wasn't supposed to happen." The judge's response was harsh. "You turned a water treatment plant into a chemical factory. You contaminated the water supply of 17,000 people. Children drank water poisoned by your manufacturing. You will spend the rest of your life in federal prison, and it still won't undo the damage you've caused." All assets connected to the operation, including the $4.5 million the cartel invested, were forfeited. The facility itself remained city property, but required complete reconstruction. Federal grants and emergency funding covered decontamination costs. Congress passed legislation requiring enhanced oversight of public-private partnerships for critical infrastructure. Water treatment facilities nationwide underwent security reviews, and EPA implemented new protocols for detecting unusual chemical signatures in municipal water systems. President Trump addressed Operation Clean Water. The Sinaloa cartel took over a water treatment plant in New Mexico. They replaced all 67 employees with cartel operatives. They manufactured $1.4 billion in fentanyl chemicals while 17,000 Americans drank contaminated water. They weaponized critical infrastructure, and we responded with overwhelming force. Every defendant will spend decades in federal prison, and we're implementing protections to ensure cartels can never infiltrate our water systems again. Health studies of Sunland Park residents continued for years. Most contamination levels hadn't reached acutely toxic thresholds, but long-term exposure effects required monitoring. The community struggled with fear, anger, and betrayal. The 67 cartel operatives served time in federal prisons across the country. The Rio Grande Regional Water Treatment Facility underwent complete reconstruction and reopened in 2026 under strict federal oversight, and municipalities nationwide learned a terrifying lesson. Even essential government services providing clean water can be infiltrated and weaponized by cartels willing to poison communities for profit. Say, if you believe Truth America is essential to exposing how cartels weaponize your critical infrastructure, then like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. Share this with everyone who drinks tap water. because you need to know that even your water supply can be infiltrated. This is why we exist, to expose attacks on critical infrastructure, the contamination of public resources, and the federal operations that protect you. This is Truth America, defending the water you drink. We'll see you in the next one.